Hello, Bellamans Church kids. Welcome to week 3 of virtual Sunday school, I guess we'll call this. Do we have any hellos today for the Sunday school classmates? Emmeline?
No.
Archie does not have anybody, apparently. Emmeline? Anybody?
Hi, Papa.
Okay, pop. Okay. Emmeline?
Hi, Kelsey.
Oh, Kelsey? Well, now, for a guy that said no, you sure have a lot of people you want to name now.
Hi, Miss Jenny.
Miss Jenny.
Hi, Miss Jenny.
Okay, so today we're going to start off with the Bible reading from Miss Kelly, and it's about fishing today, not with fishing rods, but with a fishing net.
Hi, Sunday school kids. This is Miss Kelly here again with your Bible story this week. This comes from John chapter 21, Jesus Has Risen, and it's titled Fish for Breakfast. Late one day, Peter, James, and John, and some of Jesus' other friends were together by the Sea of Galilee. "I'm going fishing," said Peter. "We will go with you," said the others. They sailed out in their boat. They threw their net into the water, and they waited and waited and waited. All night they fished, but they did not catch anything. Early in the morning, they saw someone standing on the shore. He called, "Have you caught any fish?" "No," they yelled. "Throw your net on the other side of the boat," the man called. So they threw the net on the other side. All at once, fish filled the net. John looked at Peter. "It's Jesus," he said. Peter was so excited he jumped into the water. He swam to the shore. It was Jesus! He made a little campfire. He cooked fish and bread on it. "Come and have some breakfast," Jesus called. They did not have to ask who he was. They knew he was their best friend, Jesus. He was alive!
Now in the story Miss Kelly, or Mommy, to you just read, Jesus was standing about 100 yards from the shoreline when he called out to the disciples. You know how long 100 yards is? It's about the length of a football field. So stand at one end zone and all the way to the other end zone. That's how far away the disciples were from Jesus when he was on the shore. So do you think they recognized Jesus from that distance? No. So when Jesus called out to them to throw their nets on the other side, and the disciples who hadn't caught fish all night threw their nets on the other side and caught the fish, that's when Peter thought, wait a minute, this is very familiar, because when he and James and John were in the sailboat, like that song goes, they cast their nets on the other side and caught the fish, and that's when he realized, it's Jesus! And then he swam to the shore to meet up with Jesus, because then he realized, after he caught the fish, that I remember that from before, and that's when he realized it was Jesus. And Peter had no doubt that it was Jesus. Have you ever heard of that word, doubt? What does that word doubt mean?
It means that
I'll show you. Here's that word, doubt. D-O-U-B-T. That's the word. What does it mean? What does that word mean?
It means that you don't think it's really someone.
It's kind of like you might believe, but you're not quite sure if you really believe. And Peter, he had no doubt, so he definitely believed it was Jesus. So we're going to talk a little bit about a story of someone who did doubt that it was Jesus. And on that Easter night, right after Jesus rose, that night, the disciples were having a meeting up in the upper room. The doors were locked, and they were actually hiding from the Jewish leaders. Why were they hiding from the Jewish leaders? Because they were afraid of them, because they'd just done what to Jesus?
Put him on the cross.
They put him on the cross and they crucified him. So they were Jesus' followers, so they were kind of worried that the Jewish leaders might come after them. So they were hiding up there in the room with the doors locked, and then all of a sudden Jesus showed up in the room without going through the doors or the windows. He was just there. And Jesus showed up and he showed them his hands and his side. Why? Because he had been crucified. And when he was crucified, they put the nails through his hands, and the soldier put the spear in his side to make sure he was dead. So he had those wounds, and he showed the disciples those wounds, and then they believed that it was Jesus. Now, one of the disciples one of the inner 12 disciples, was not there, and his name was Thomas. And this is exactly what Thomas looked like. This was Thomas the disciple, right?
No, that's Thomas the Tank.
Oh, that's Thomas the Tank Engine. We don't really know what Thomas looked like. I'm sure he didn't look like a tank engine, though. He probably looked like a lot like you and I look. But he was not there that day. And later that week, when the disciples met with Thomas, Thomas said, I don't believe it. I doubt that was Jesus. In fact, if I don't see those wounds and put my hand in those wounds, I'm not going to believe it's Jesus. So about a week later, they were meeting again in the upper room, and Thomas was with them this time. And guess who showed up again without going through a door, without going through a window? He was just there. It was Jesus. He showed up, and guess who do you think he went to? Who do you think he went to first? Thomas. And he said, here you go. See the wounds? Put your hand right in there. Put your hand right in my side and feel the wounds. And Thomas was like, wow, it is Jesus. He said, my Lord and my God. So Thomas believed right then and there that Jesus was who he said he was, which was God's Son, and he had been resurrected from the grave. Now, Thomas didn't believe until he saw. But Jesus said, blessed are those who believe who haven't seen. And that's you and me. We haven't seen Jesus, right? But we can believe because the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, recorded all these things about Jesus' life so that we can believe in Jesus even though we don't see Jesus. And now I have a good way to remember how to spell this word doubt, because that's a tricky word, right? It's got a B in there. You don't really hear the B. It's a silent B. Sounds like maybe it would be D-O-U-T, not D-O-U-B-T. But here's an easy way to remember it. If you look at this, D-O is what? What word? Do. You. B stands for believe. Thomas. Do you believe, Thomas? That's what Jesus asked Thomas. Do you believe, Thomas? Do you believe, Thomas? And Thomas, who originally doubted, then did believe. And there's our story for today and your way to remember how to spell doubt. So now we're going to end our service with a song. For our song today, we're going to do a song that's very familiar to our nursery school class, and it's very similar to the story that Miss Kelly read earlier. It's about Jesus, his disciples, and a fishing trip. So here we go with Peter, James, and John in a sailboat.
You can do the motions, those who remember them.
Peter, James, and John in a sailboat. Peter, James, and John in a sailboat. Peter, James, and John in a sailboat. Out on the deep blue sea. They cast their nets, but they caught no fish. They cast their nets, but they caught no fish. They cast their nets, but they caught no fish. Out on the deep blue sea. Then Jesus Christ came into the sailboat. Jesus Christ came into the sailboat. Jesus Christ came into the sailboat. Out on the deep blue sea. And he said, cast your nets on the other side. Cast your nets on the other side. Cast your nets on the other side. Out on the deep blue sea.
Out on the deep blue sea.
Have a great week, Bellmans.
We'll see you next week.